I am going to talk tonight about photographing urban scenes. And we'll touch on buildings because I really covered a lot of that in my last talk, and I'll cover a bit again. But I want to focus on photographing people. Okay, a lot of people call it street photography. Um, so just a quick mention, it was April 19th, 2021. I think some of you were there then in the meeting room where I talked about architectural photography. And of course, in LA, there's lots of buildings. So you're going to see some heritage buildings, some very contemporary buildings. That's going to be great. But I think one thing you're going to have trouble avoiding is people. Okay. And uh, I really want to spend a fair bit of time talking about that whole notion. And you're going to be spending a fair bit of time in what's called the public realm. That's a location where the public is allowed. Generally, it's outdoors, but it could be indoors as well. But look at the list on the left: streets, sidewalks, crosswalks, laneways, alleyways, promenades, plazas, parks, transit vehicles. We'll talk about that. Transit stops, balconies, terraces. You'll see people and you can photograph them. Doorways, places to sit, looking through windows, whether you're outside looking in or inside looking out. And I'll mention a bit about that as well. But the key is photographing people in a way that technically, arguably, is they're not aware of being photographed. It's candid. Okay, that doesn't mean you can't also photograph people that know they're being photographed. So we'll cover a little bit of that as well. Now I just zoomed in on that photograph, which predominantly was buildings. But the thing to have in your mind, that the words to have in your mind as you're walking around, is a slice of life. Okay, because that's what makes urban photography quite exciting. It's also challenging. Some people do not like photographing strangers, and I'll talk about ways to deal with that as well. Here's one way. First of all, crosswalks generally will have people at some time. Okay, so you can position yourself in a way where they're worried about getting across the street and they're not thinking about you photographing them. So what I like about this picture is I've got a few people in the crosswalk. None of them are looking at me. They're all doing their own thing, different clothing, different hair color, and look at the shadows. Now, the reason I say that is, for me, the shadow of an object, in this case, people, is part of the object. Now, you can't always achieve that, especially if it's not a sunny day, right? But if there is some sunlight and there are shadows, you can consider that as part of your composition. So I'll just kind of start off with that one. This is in Chicago, and this one place to stand is on the median, all right, of a street. When my wife first saw this picture, she was really chewing me out, thinking, what are you walking and standing in the middle of the street? I'm not advising you to stand in the middle of the street. But what I'm doing here in Chicago, there's a location where there's a median and it ends here. So it looks like I'm standing in the middle of the street, if that makes sense. Why am I taking this picture? Well, this is a backdrop, and I'm waiting for people to cross the crosswalk. Okay, so you require a little bit of patience. That's something that's very important in urban photography. It's the same with wildlife photography. There are three aspects of street photography. There's a technical aspect, there's an artistic aspect, and there's a behavioral aspect. Now, some of you, I bet, enjoy photographing wildlife. It's exactly the same for people. You need to know the habits of the species, the corridors of movement, the feeding times, the quality and direction of light, and you have to be patient. You just have to wait for a great opportunity. And it's okay to call it luck. That doesn't mean it's not important. Luck is very important. I mean, what can I say? First of all, on a global scale, you guys and me as well, up here in Vancouver, Canada, we live in paradise. It's a relatively safe environment. It's fantastic, and I always enjoy traveling, but I'm always happy to come home. For this photo walk and any photo walk, in a way, the recommendation is to just have one lens. All right. Why? Because if you're changing lenses, it could be a problem, and all that stuff. But if I only had one lens to go on a photo walk, I would take a zoom lens that would be in the order of 24 to 70 millimeters on a full frame sensor. So I know a number of you have different size sensors. That's fine. You can do the mathematics on that. But also in an urban setting, carrying around a tripod, if you're going into a building and you have advanced permission and you're maybe going there before it opens, fine. I love tripods, but people can trip on them, and it's just really not the best thing to have. So no tripod. Years ago, part of the reason for a tripod was because you had a lot of flexibility with shutter speed. Today, and I know you guys know this, but you can use high shutter speeds, not worry about noise levels, because there's software to deal with that. You may have image stabilization in your camera. If you don't, you can just lean on a wall, lean on an object, sit on a bench. I recommend, you could bring a sponge, that's soft and gushy, if that's the right word. It doesn't have to be wet. It's always malleable, okay, pliable. And you can put that sponge on the top of the back of a seat or a bench. You can put it on a bollard. Got a lot of flexibility, okay? I was taught by Joe McNally that in the early days when I was taking as many photo workshops as I could find, I was taught that when you press the shutter on a camera, it moves, whether you think it does or not, because you're forcing down on the camera. So what I do is to put my thumb underneath the body, especially if you have a small camera and a hand that's big enough, and use my forefinger and I squeeze equal and opposite pressure. Makes a big difference. You may not believe it, but it really does. McNally also would tell me, if you use your forefinger and you can't put your thumb underneath, you can just roll your finger over the shutter. That also makes a big difference from pressing down. In any event, also, we'll talk about the notion of cropping. Crop is a 4-letter word. It's okay to crop. In film days, people thought you were kind of not worthy if you had to crop a scene. Today with so many megapixels, don't worry about cropping. With software that upreses images, there's so many options, so many fantastic choices. So here's the picture I got, one of them. I took a lot of pictures. I picked the one that I thought, I like it the best. That's the original uncropped view, basically, using the L-train structure there above, that steel structure that's kind of the frame, looking down the throat of the street to get a sense of depth. And I pre-focused below the lady's feet in the foreground, because the street was gritty, if I can say it that way, so I could focus. Then I started cropping. I cropped this initially, and then I ended up cropping it like this. Point is, this is like a bit of a ballet. Look at their legs. At first, I didn't like the McDonald's cup, but then this is the era, which will probably last another couple of centuries. But the fact is that the straw she's holding, the cup she's holding, her leg positioning, I was happy with that. Okay. Street photography is what it's called, but in urban photography, it's a mirror of society. It's a slice of urban life. It's documentary reportage. It's irony, it's tragedy, unpredictability, cruelty, humor, beauty. Lots of options here, folks. I'm not into unpredictability and tragedy and cruelty anymore. I used to get that at public hearings when I had to get buildings approved. But I like beauty and I like humor. I'm going to admit something to you. My little boy brain, I was looking at this view. This is in Curacao, and there's a gentleman making breakfast. In my little boy brain, I thought he was kind of like, if I can say this, he was relieving himself. So I will admit to you that I colored the water coming out of the stern. Yeah, I did a good job on that, don't you think? Lisbon, Portugal. I like streets that don't have cars on them. Most of the streets in LA will have cars and buses, but there may be some alleyways or walkways that don't. And I just find that more enjoyable for urban photography. Unless you're into cars, then go for it. But I like the color arrangement in this picture and the fact that the fellow walking toward me was not looking at me. Click, that's the picture. So the buildings you see are important, but they're the backdrop now. They're the context for the photo of people in an urban setting. As was mentioned in the introduction, I've retired as an architect and urban designer. I actually design pieces of cities. Now people ask me what I'm doing. I don't say I'm a photographer because, like, who isn't a photographer, right? Everyone has a camera of some sort. What I say is that I enrich people's lives through enhanced visual perception. That's called an elevator pitch, right? That's you're trying to get someone to say, what is that? What do you mean? And then you start a conversation. So I like all kinds of photography. And I have to tell you that when you learn photography, even if you go on your next holiday excursion and don't take a camera, which I know is terrible to say, but if that was the case, you would still see more and remember more and appreciate more. So I'm all about teaching and education. I'm going to give you some disruptive thoughts, stuff to think about that maybe you hadn't considered. And I'm going to show you lots of pictures, I promise, but I'm also going to use lots of words. You know, I know a picture's worth 1,000 words. I actually think a great phrase is worth 1,000 pictures. Please don't leave. I promise I will show you lots of images. But let's talk about words, some considerations. The urban context or setting, it's called, drives the image. That's a very important part of the image. The content features people or implies human life, means doesn't have to have a person. Maybe it's an unfinished meal. Maybe it's an open sleeping bag. I don't know. The scene is initially candid, not staged or posed. You notice I said initially. If a person sees you photographing them and they ask you, what are you doing? There are things you can say. We can talk about that as well. The subject, for me, is actually the entire field of view, edge to edge. If you were an oil painter, you put paint on the entire canvas, right? So it's much more than just, oh, I got this cool picture of a car, or look at this guy, look at how he's dressed. No, it's the whole picture, the foreground and the background, okay? So I was sitting, you'll be there for lunchtime. If you can find a place to grab a bite where you're either sitting outdoors or sitting by a window indoors, it's a great place to just watch people walking by. This is in Havana, Cuba. I was sitting in a laneway with a little restaurant, and I'm looking at a wall. I picked a seat where I thought it would be a great background, okay? And this guy, I see this guy coming from my right, and he's walking toward the scene. I look at him, I look at his hair, I look at the wall, I look at his shirt, I look at the wall, I look at his pants, I look at the wall, I look at his skin color, I look at the wall, and I'm thinking this guy could be part of the wall in terms of color. So click, that's how I got that image. Which brings up a quote from Alfred Eisenstadt, very famous photographer. By now, I've learned that the most important thing to do when you photograph somebody in a room or outside is not look at the subject, but the background. That's how important he thought the background was. Sam Abel, you may have heard of him, famous National Geographic photographer. He's still with us, okay? The background layer is the one most often overlooked. So I want to stress that. The content features people or implies human life, right? Well, look at this picture. You might not find this in LA. You'd be surprised what you're going to find in LA. There's a lot to see. So I think it was mentioned early that the urban context is so feature rich, target rich, right? You could just stand on any corner, stand anywhere, and you could spend the entire day just there. So of course, moving around is going to be great. Heidi's right. Go for a walk. Think about what you may want to come back to, because if you start photographing as you're walking along, it's going to be you never get to the end of the walk. but this is tough to do. I realize I'm just as guilty. I see something. Oh, I get my camera. I click, right? Anyway, I like this image. It's underwear. What can I say? Sam Abel also says, compose a picture from back to front, right? The context first, look for a great scene, and then populate the picture. Wait for the actors to come on stage. How about if I say it that way? This is in Antigua, Guatemala. I love the scene. I found this scene online. Well, how do I shouldn't say it that way. I used the photographer's ephemeris, which is where you can see where the sun's going to rise, where the shadows are going to fall. So I was ready in my mind. I was thinking, which side of the street do I want to walk on so that the sun, if there is sun, lighting up the backdrop, and having the sun kind of graze along the side of the building where the shadows are even more prominent, I just think is great. You can see the hand of the lady, the shadow, the hand of her hand as she's walking along. I like the color of her dress or her blouse relative to the color of the wall. Yeah, so click. Some people say to me, well, even I do this when I'm listening to a speaker and they show me a picture. I think, I wonder how many pictures they took. And I'd love to see some other ones of the same scene, So this is another one that I made. Same location. Again, it's 24 to 70 millimeter lens. I saw this lady running. I zoomed it a little bit and click. And I used a fast shutter speed so that I could get her she's in motion, but she's fairly still, if that makes sense. Both feet are off the ground. Yeah. And I'm realizing this is not LA, but every city you go to will have interesting scenes with interesting people. What caused me to look at this was the color of the blue color in three places. And this is a famous quote from Robert Capa. If your pictures aren't good enough, you aren't close enough. If you think you are close enough, get closer. Some people actually attribute this to his girlfriend that would travel with him. But having said that, I have another approach. I like not only trying to get close, much closer, it would make it a portrait, which you could do, but you really want to get the whole person in the context, right? One option is to just use a wide angle. And depending on what's in that scene, it can be nice. I like this. I like the fact that there's so much going on the street and this guy is just sitting there. So that's just a thought. But you can do portraiture. You can get close to people. How do you do that? Well, I'm standing on a corner. Actually, I'm standing on a sidewalk in New York City, and there's a lineup for taxis. So I'm in the line, not to get a picture, not to get a ride, but to get a picture of the taxi driver. Sure enough, the guy to my right is first in line. So the taxi driver pulls up, says, "Hey, mister, you want a ride?" And the guy got in, but I got the picture. This is interesting because, again, I'm back in Havana, Cuba, which is, by the way, awesome for street photography. But I found this gentleman, and what I do when I see someone, he's the busker, right? And so I take a step forward, click, another step forward, click, slowly moving towards him because I'm thinking eventually he's going to say, wait, back away. I'm actually shy. People don't believe that, but I'm honest with you guys. I got home, I started going through the images and I'm looking at this guy. I'm thinking, I thought I was so successful getting close to him. And I see this white cane on the ground with a red stripe. And then I look at his glasses and they're solid. This guy's blind. No wonder he let me get close to him. So the challenge of this, you may think, well, big deal. What's the picture? Well, I was what's called bobbing and weaving. I was bouncing around trying to get a picture without other people. I wanted just to get him in the backdrop. Why? Because I'm going to show you the street he's on. And this is not my favorite kind of environment to photograph. This is crazy. I mean, if you love it, awesome. There's no, what's great about photography? There's no universal rules of anything. Any camera, any scene, uh, uh, anything is fantastic. Okay. But I'm just sharing. So I'm saying for me, this is like, oh, yay. I would like it a little less frenetic. So one good place I enjoy is to get up on a terrace somewhere. Like if you're gonna be going by a couple hotels, and I bet you one of them will have a roof terrace, or maybe a level above the ground that's maybe for a restaurant or something, where you can either you can lean over an edge, and I like this kind of stuff. So I'm waiting for somebody to walk by. I see this guy, and if you saw me in the Zoom picture, I happen to like guys with bald heads now, but I didn't always like that, but now I appreciate that. So I got his shadow, got him, he's walking to the right. I'm happy. The photographer must lie in wait, watching out for his prey, and have a presentiment for what is about to happen. That's Cartier-Bresson. Okay. They all say the same thing in different ways. How about people in buses? Buses are going by. So what are they going to do? This is not a bus stop. This guy's in motion. All right. So I'm thinking that this is either 500th or 1,000th of a second. Fine. And click. And look at the people in the bus. It's kind of cool. Then I thought, well, what if I can get closer? I can crop. Okay. So I like the crop one as well. And then what I did was I stood I waited for a bus to come by the corner or the sidewalk where I was standing. Like I'm like 3 feet away from this bus. And so I used a high shutter speed, and luckily got the people in focus. The guy's hand is not, but that's okay. That's fine. I'm happy with this. I especially like the lady in the lower left-hand corner. Is she looking at me? I don't know. It's moving quickly. So they're just looking out, and here I come. They won't go past, and it's done. So how about some thoughts and tips? The best camera is one you have with you. That's Chase Jarvis. Okay. I've added to it because these days it's also the one you are allowed to have in your hands. I have been stopped in various jurisdictions for having a camera. Arguably, in most cities, if you're in the public realm, and you assume that between buildings on a street, it's public, it's not always the case. In, I think it was Dallas, Texas, where I was stopped because I was photographing a building, and I was standing on the sidewalk, and I was looking across the street, and the guy comes and said, this is his sidewalk. He worked for a hotel. I'm not allowed to photograph. I thought, you serious? So when that happens, I say, well, tell me the rules. So I'm teaching photography. I've got a group here. I don't want to do the wrong thing again. Can you show me, can you give me a link, or can you show me the legislation that says I'm not allowed to photograph here? So I have never gotten that answer from anyone in any city. Okay. But what are you going to do? It's not worth an argument. Just say sorry and walk away. This is also an advantage sometimes with a silent shutter. If you have that, it's also an advantage if you have a flip screen on the back of your camera. You can sit on a bench. People think you're looking at your camera, you're looking at your images, and you're clicking away. I'm a fan of overshooting. It's called spraying and praying. Okay. Some people think, oh, you overshoot, you shoot too many pictures, you don't know what you're doing. BS. Take as many pictures as you want. Don't show them to everybody. Then you got to be ruthless and eliminate the ones that you don't think are the best. Engaging people before to ask them photo. Yeah, you can ask people if you want to take a photo or make a photo. I don't say, can I make a photo? What I might say is, let me think of an example. Some guy's got this incredible hat on. Excuse me, sir. I love your hat. Did you make that? Make it? No. I just think it's great. Do you mind if I just photograph your hat? Or someone's purse, or their shoes, whatever, or their dog that's next to them. They don't know what kind of lens you have. You can look at the dog and take a wide angle and get the person. Get my idea, okay? And that's having a decoy subject. Okay, a decoy subject is like I'm photographing a person and they come over to me and say, "What are you doing?" "Oh, sorry, I didn't even see you." "What do you mean you didn't see me?" "No, you see, there was a bird up on the perch there on that building, and it just flew away." Okay, just giving you thoughts. So I'm in actually a pie shop in Toronto, and I liked this scene, and I said to the lady, this is the proprietor. She's cutting a piece of it. I was at the end of the line. I said, "Oh, excuse me, do you mind if I photograph?" She said, "Well, don't photograph other people. Don't photograph people. Um, sure, it's okay." So as I got close to her, I clicked. She's looking at somebody behind me, and I like the scene. That's a street photo. I know it's indoors, but that's what it's called. Okay. Juxtaposition, contradiction, irony, that can be powerful. This is in Toronto as well. Street art. I'm looking at the street art, which normally I don't photograph, but then the butcher comes out of the butcher shop, and he's got a cigarette. He sits down on a bench, and I'm going, ooh, 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 get happy feet. I'm trying to think, okay, what are my settings on my camera? Is everything okay? I'm trying to pre-focus, do whatever I'm going to do. And puts the cigarette in his mouth, lets out a little puff of smoke, click. That's it. So one guy says to me, "Well, it's too bad he didn't have a Sherlock Holmes pipe." Well, yeah, but you get what you can get. So that's an example of an urban photograph. Here's something I want you to think about seriously. If you want your photograph to tell a story, which is big these days, right? How many people have you talked to recently that say you have to have a story? You should photograph to tell a story. Okay. If you want your photograph to tell a story, think of the components of a stage play. Only instead of starting with a script, the story evolves from a product of the components. So a cast of characters are going to be people and things, because it doesn't have to be people, right? It could be an automobile, but there's a stage set, there's a context, there's a field of view in your camera. There's a score. Well, in a play, it might be music, but in a photograph, it might be activity. There's a mood. Oh, the lighting creates the mood. Well, lighting, weather, gesture. Don't bemoan the fact that it's cloudy day, or even if it's raining. That's like a good time to photograph people. They're certainly not looking around at you. And on a sunny day, I try not to have sunlight directly on somebody's face. It's very difficult to photograph, especially when there's just a single light source, very strong. So, but instead, mood also involves gesture, and we'll look at the gesture in just a moment in this example. Wardrobe, well, color, black and white, pattern, texture. Audience, well, that's beholders of your images, even if it's just you. And then there's a script. Well, the script is the story. Okay, so I'm in Havana, Cuba. I see this scene. I'm thinking, oh man, this is great. I love buildings that are decomposing. I think it's because when I look at myself in the mirror these days, that's kind of what I'm starting to see. Okay, so I'm actually pretending that I'm photographing the screen door. I know that's nuts. But that it's important. It's important. I have an advantage. I have a little boy brain. All right. So anyway, I'm standing opposite this wall. These three guys walk up. I'm kind of looking around, photographing. They forget about me eventually, right? And look at this. Look at the clothing they're wearing. If I had to hire three extras to populate this picture, I couldn't have found three guys that are better, right? They're all doing their own thing. They're not even looking at each other, and they've got three different poses. One guy's eating, one guy's got his hands clasped, one guy's looking somewhere else. It's great. I mean, that sounds arrogant, but I'm happy with it. You know what? Don't worry. This is going to be controversial, but I appreciate competitions. I appreciate judges. They're fantastic. The only thing that matters is you. You should be photographing, unless you're a commercial photographer. That's a different story, okay? But I'm assuming you're not a commercial photographer. You're doing it for enjoyment. All that matters is that you enjoy it. Yes, I know it's nice to win a competition and get lots of points. Oh, that's great. But, you know, if you want to be creative, all you got to do is just try to express yourself, because you as a human being are unique, not only unique to every single person on earth, but unique to every single person that ever walked the earth. Okay? Think about that. You are special. You are unique. That is what creativity is all about. We can learn a lot from words. Okay? So here's a quote. I work from awkwardness. By that, I mean I don't like to arrange things. And if I stand in front of something, instead of arranging it, I arrange myself. That's very powerful. You know, bob and weave and move around. Diane Arbus, famous photographer. Here's another one. It all comes down to the same thing. You can't make anything happen. You just have to be ready when it does. So this has to do with anticipation. That's a very powerful notion in photography, especially when there's people or things that are moving, or maybe it's even clouds moving, and the sun is gonna shine through, or whatever. This guy, Andrew Vaz, is actually a lawyer. This is a positive thing about lawyers, but because this could work very well for photography. All right. Can't make anything happen. Got to be ready, though, when it does. And finally, one more quote. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. This is so true in photography. Some of you will know who this is quoting, but this is actually Wayne Gretzky. Sorry, it's actually Wayne Gretzky, who's a very famous hockey player. And I have to say, he's from Vancouver. Somehow I left his name off, but you got to trust me on that. Okay. So I saw these. This is in England. This is in Cambridge. Oh, I got to teach at Cambridge, teach photography. It was fantastic. Okay. So in any event, I go to this Sunday event. And who knows, in LA, there might be some event where there's booths set up. So in this case, I walked up to these ladies and I asked them, would it be okay if I photographed, your booth? And they were selling cheese. It's a cheese and pie shop. And they said, okay. So, I said, just do your thing. Forget about me. Okay. Well, they had trouble doing that. So they started off. One lady there, the proprietor, is talking to her helper, oh, look at that guy, he's photographing. So I photographed that. And then they kept looking at me. All right. I could not stop. And it got even worse or better. I mean, this is a case where they know they're being photographed and they're gonna show off. They're gonna have fun. So you can have fun, you can photograph it. Then a lady comes up who's actually purchasing something. And then the proprietor, she's gonna be like Vanna White. You know who that was? Vanna White, or who is she's showing me the product, like she's on TV. Anyway, I enjoy that. So now I'm back in, where is this? This is in Portugal, Lisbon. So there's a view spot in Lisbon where you can get up high. There's only like 2 or 3 of these in the city of Lisbon. And I took the kind of like the standard shot. Okay, there's the city of Lisbon. Now what do I do? So I start looking around, and then I looked down. Oh, I found a lady. This is a local. She lives there and she is putting out her cigarette. Or flickering the ashes. Fine, click. That's a shot. But then I'm running out of things to do because I do not normally photograph tourists. All right. And all there were in this area where I was photographing were tourists. So I thought, okay, I'm going to photograph tourists. So this lady is posing for her boyfriend or her husband. I don't know. She's posing. She looks to me like she's imitating the construction cranes in the distance, those 3 big construction cranes. So click, that's one example. Don't cut off the feet of people, by the way, especially dancers. Hands and feet are important. Okay, now, I'm not saying she's a dancer, but either go in for a headshot or maybe upper body, but try to keep the rest. I'll show you different examples. The great thing about people who are taking selfies is they are not looking at anything but the camera that they've got. So you can walk right up to them. I was very close to these people, and click. So that's a picture. Then it gets even better because you see, to me, this guy's saying, honey, do we have to keep doing this? Like, we're in this beautiful environment, this strange city. We haven't been here before, and you're photographing the buildings on the hill. You can't even see us in the picture, and the sun's in my eyes, and that's what's going through my mind. So click. That's an example. This gets better because look at the expression on this lady. She's saying to her boyfriend or her husband, if you keep taking these pictures, I'm done. Like, I'm tired of this. So I love her expression. And fine, that was that. So now let's talk a little bit about buildings, because they're going to be everywhere. Regardless of, there's going to be some very modern buildings, very cool buildings, and some more, call it heritage buildings or placeholder buildings. They're all good. Everything's good. So what's wrong with this picture? If you went to my last presentation over a year ago, year and a half ago, I guess, I talked about the fact that if you want to mimic human vision, if you want to record a scene that you remember seeing, you want to maintain a level horizon, all right? The horizon only occurs where water and sky come together. Well, where does that happen? I bet it doesn't happen in Redlands, and you need a huge body of water for that to work. So there's another way to do it. If you can create two vertical edges that are truly vertical, one on the left side of the screen and one on the right side of the screen. So see, most buildings today, and I think this is true of Redlands, the walls are vertical. The edges of the walls are vertical, meaning the top is directly above the bottom of that vertical edge. Okay, some people use the word straight. Well, straight means it's not curved. I'm talking about horizontal and vertical. Okay, so what I want to do is to in this particular case, I took the camera and I turned it 90 degrees. So I took a vertical picture, right? Or what some people call portrait, even though it's not a person. Okay, and then I cropped off the bottom because you end up with more street than you want. But that's the picture I got. And this is respecting the science of human vision. You can level your camera, which is the best way, but then you're going to have a lot of stuff down below you may not want. Or you can also fix it like in a program like Lightroom or Photoshop or On One or any of the, whatever program you have these days. You can adjust the geometry, okay? So that's what I was doing here. Then I noticed, you see up on this wall here, see where my cursor is? There are some people up here. Oh, so I stood over here on this sidewalk, okay? And I tilted the camera up, but I tweaked it afterwards to make the verticals vertical, the vertical edges vertical. So it looked like I'm like kind of like right across the street at her level. I'm not. She's fixing her hair. I thought she was getting ready to throw something at me. That's how I am. I'm so nervous about people. But in the event, that's the picture. I'm happy with that. Here's another one. I'm higher than the lady. This is not in LA. Sorry, this is not in Cuba. This is in Cuba. This is in Havana, Cuba as well. I'm above her. I'm on another level of a building. I can look out, and she's exercising. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in on this, and that for me was what I was really trying to get. So I cropped it, and I'll tell you that. My favorite part of the picture, what drew me to the picture, was her shadow. I'm into shadows, and there's like bird poop on the right. I didn't take the bird poop out. It's there. It's on the balcony level. That's part of the environment. Okay, so I'm celebrating the poop. Then I was walking along another day in the same location, and there she was on the balcony. So I kind of looked at her. I gave her a little wave, a little smile. I put my camera up like, is it okay if I take your picture? And I thought she was flipping the bird to me, but she's actually giving me like, yeah, go ahead, man. This is the victory sign. Go for it. So click. Okay. The common element of composition in every photograph is the image frame. Okay, it's the surrounding edge. Ignoring the frame as a key compositional element will usually result in a clumsy, awkward composition that looks forced and random. Now, this is a professor of neurophysiology, okay, in Bristol, England, that I'm quoting. And I'll quote myself, it could be argued that it's the image frame that often separates fine art from a snapshot. All right. So I'm going to show you this picture. This is in Toronto, Canada. And it's a sunny day. You might say, sunny day, it doesn't look sunny. Well, what I do is I want to photograph in a way where I don't overexpose. I want to make the picture as bright as possible without overexposing. I use the histogram to make that decision. I don't want the histogram, which is like a mountain range, right? I don't want it climbing the right side. I will get the shadows back. That's what's the beautiful thing today about digital imaging is that you can recover shadows. You couldn't always do that as well as you can today. So it's a sunny day. These are buildings. The verticals are vertical. The horizon is level because I know that because there's a vertical edge on the right, vertical edge on the left. That means the horizon automatically is going to be level. That's geometry. So that's a way to keep the level. And there's the picture. I brought out the information. So I'm happy with that. I can see the smoke in the sky. I can see the cloud cover, which is very, very scanty, but hey, it's there. And yes, there's some shadows in the picture, but I can see that sunlit brick building very clearly. That's what I was photographing, okay? The kind of the principal area of interest in the overall subject, okay, is that central building. Well, here's a more modern building. This is in near Vancouver in a city called Victoria, which is the capital city of Vancouver. It's on an island called Vancouver Island. It gets very confusing. However, that's the exterior. Then I went inside, and it's got an atrium space. Now, you're going to be going to the Bradbury building and others perhaps where in LA, those of you who are going to go on this, by the way, Heidi's great. She knows LA. I would like to hire her to take me around LA, but I can't get there, okay, right now. But the point is, what I did was there's an elevator, there's a glass elevator. So what I did was I actually went up to the top floor and then I pressed every other button. Luckily, there was nobody else on the elevator, otherwise they would, they would not be happy. But I took a picture at each level and I made a panorama. So that's the photograph. Just something to consider. Otherwise, I could get a really super wide angle lens, but then that means that's another lens. And if you can only take one lens, I'm trying to cover off what you could do. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation how nice it is if light is shining parallel to a wall surface. Ideally in the early morning or late afternoon. That may not be possible on your trip, but it's the best time of day. This is a flat brick wall. But look at when the light is shining right parallel with the wall. It's called grazed light. It's awesome. The expression I use is you can taste the wall. You can see all the texture of the wall. And the same is true of the ground. This is an old street called Acorn Street in Boston. All right. And look at the pebbled street. Oh, it's great. I mean, it's actually smoother than it looks. I don't care. I just wanted that texture. Then I waited till the sun moved to the right to get behind the tree up there on the upper left. And I got the other side. And a kid walked down the sidewalk. That's luck. But I was ready for him. And I clicked the shutter. I love his color of his pants, color of the US flag. And I mean, so.
Rick, you say you clicked the shutter, but was it really you click the shutter?
No, this one was just one. I didn't have, this camera was not like a too much. Good question. So you could, if you have a camera that has a high frame rate, yes, you could click like crazy or just hold it down. I didn't do that. and it's partly luck, because I can't get this every time, but I'm only showing you the pictures I really like. But look at his shadow. It's on the sidewalk. Whoa. That may not seem like a big deal to you guys. You may say, well, I'm nuts. Well, that's okay. I am nuts. I admit it. I can crop it, making sure I want to have this lantern breathe up here. I want some breathing room. That's the term I use. Look at the grill here on the wall. That's breathing. The window opening is breathing. And yes, I can cut through things. The tops of the shutters are breathing. There's space, in other words. And here I'm cutting through things. So it's a balancing act, but it's thoughtful. Sam Abel says, compose and wait. So I was ready. And luckily somebody walked by. I didn't know that was going to happen. Here's another example. The subject of a photograph embraces the entire field of view. Okay, I said that already, but it's important. All right. Let me show you something. This is in Chicago. This is, this is a street in Chicago. Like LA, the streets are going to be wider and there's going to be a ton of cars and all that other stuff. If you can find something in the foreground to kind of mask some of that street activity, that's just a value judgment on my part. I'm just trying to tell you what I do. You just got to get people to speak to you that will be honest about what they're trying to do, and you'll learn something from everyone. But I used a wide angle lens, so I had a big depth of field. So pretty much everything's in focus. It's one click. It's not exposure bracketing, not exposure. Sorry, it's not image stacking, photo, whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not stacking the photos. It's one click, and but I'm proud of it. Look at, and I'm also thinking in advance that I want the pictures to fill the frame of my projection, because I give talks. This is my life these days. I give Zoom talks or personal talks. And look at how the window frame, I'm letting the whole window breathe. I'm cutting through these windows. I'm cutting through the top of this building. Look at these windows. They're breathing. Oh, I'm cutting through here, but on the left, there's space. The car, I get a car that I can see the whole car. Then I'm clipping through the car in the background. This pot that has the plant, when I'm looking at a scene, I'm quickly scanning the whole perimeter. You may think, how can you do that? I mean, it takes forever. No, if you're aware of it, you're thinking about it from the very beginning. And it actually comes more naturally. You got to trust me on this. It's not something that's super difficult to do. You just got to be aware of it. Same thing in this view. Now, this is Chicago. This is a plaza. I was there pretty early in the morning. There were no people there because I learned that what time it opens. It's a public plaza, but it's not open 24 hours a day. So I got there like right when it opened, okay? And I was hoping, see, the sun is the sun is rising behind me. You see, this is the background behind me. And this is a sculpture. The public calls it the Bean, but it's the real name is the Cloud Gate sculpture. In any event, I can see reflected there, like I'm in there too, but I'm like way back where the cursor is, but you can't see me. It doesn't matter. I was hoping to get golden hour light. Oh, I was dreaming that I could have the kind of a yellowish light. That's what happens when the sun comes through the atmosphere in a low level. And the sun, the light, the clouds would be they'd be more obvious. It's kind of a mushy now. And so what I did, and I'm telling you guys this because we're bonding, okay? I used a filter to I think it was in On One, okay, and it's called a golden hour filter. Okay, watch this. Look at the sky. Look at the buildings. 3, 2, 1. This was, by the way. Oh, before I show it to you, sorry, anticlimactic. Where you're going to go, those of you who go, the sunrise is going to be at 7:03 a.m. If it's going to be a pretty clear sky, you might want to get there just a little bit early, but that's kind of up to you guys. Some of you might want to actually go and check out the area, because there's a map that's available, Heidi put online, that you can kind of know where you're going to be. So you might check out areas where the sun is going to be, blah, blah, blah. That's up to you. In any event, I was down to one. Now I'm going to show you the image. Here we go. Look at that. Look at the sky. Look at the color of the building. Look at the sun reflected in the bean. I added that. That's a starburst. I added that. Now you may say that's cheating. Fine, it's cheating. But I'm telling you what I'm doing, okay? Because we're bonding right now, all right? I want you to know what I'm doing. I'm having a good time. That's all that matters for me, all right? So that's an example. Here's another thing. Let's talk about black and white photography. You may think, well, this is not black and white. No, that's true. But this picture is taken from a parking garage. This is in Boston, Massachusetts, okay? So another place where I was doing a workshop. What I do is I always arrive a couple of days early. I work with a person who's local, knows where to photograph from, or what to photograph, and maybe even more importantly, where to eat, right? In any event, this is a color image. It includes color and luminance. Okay, luminance is brightness level, right? So I'm in a parking garage. This is great. Being in a parking garage affords you different levels that you can look out from. Usually they're open, so you don't have to worry about, having to look through glass or look through walls. I'm not that good. In any event, I'm going to show you what happens if it's pure color. Okay, this is going to be a quick demonstration of how to deal with black and white. First of all, let's look at, this is color and luminance. We're going to look at pure color, okay? There's very little sense of depth in pure color, okay? Almost no sense of depth. But pure luminance, because we only see color in luminance, all right? Here's the color picture. Here's the one that's pure luminance. Look at the difference. Why is this cool? For me, it's cool because I'm maximizing the sense of depth. That's when black and white makes the most sense. Okay. Now, here back in Cuba, I'm on a hotel upper level. I'm looking out from a roof terrace. I look at the buildings, the time of day, golden hour afternoon. I love the color. Great. I'm thinking, let's try this in black and white. Well, you know what? Not that great. This is not exciting for me. So part of the message here is it's not always easy to know when to shoot black and white, all right? So this is after dusk or dusk, right? The sun's gone down, and it's not nearly as exciting as when the sun was lit up. The sun was lighting up the scene. So I made this in black and white. Look at that. Oh, that I like. All of a sudden, I turned a dud into a picture I can use. So I'm saying you can explore, you can experiment. You can some people set the back of their camera, the screen, to be black and white. Yeah, you can do that. I find the best way is just you learn after a while. Just practice, take lots of pictures, you'll figure it out. Remember this one? This is where I was looking at this gentleman walking by. I'm going to show you something in black and white. Look at his face and look at the wall behind him, kind of that area all at once. I'm going to change it to black and white. Can you see there's a greater sense of depth? You start to see the wrinkles in his face. This works great for old people. My wife would kill me if I did this. I can't do this for her. But the point is, you can consider playing with black and white. Okay. This is my favorite tool for using for urban imagery. I love looking inside of shops. I love being inside of a shop or a restaurant, sitting by the window or standing by the window and photographing outdoors. Well, the problem is looking through glass. So my favorite tool is a rubber lens hood. I have a rubber lens hood I can put on my camera. It costs like, I don't know, between $10 and $14, I believe, kind of thing. And I think that's US dollars. And I was standing outside and I put my camera up to the window, click. And this is a broom shop. They make brooms. It's really cool. It doesn't work like in Harry Potter. I tried, and I couldn't. It would not lift me off the ground. But it's really cool. So just a tip, right? Just an idea to have a rubber lens hood. Looking through glass, the reflections disappear. Here's another one. Different day. I was walking by. Oh, click. So some people feel that, you know, you can anticipate all you want, but everything in life is predetermined. There are people that feel that no matter what you do, life is predetermined. So I'm going to recompose this picture, and I'm going to put up a quote from a famous physicist who sadly is no longer with us, Stephen Hawking. And his quote is, "I've noticed that even people who claim everything is predetermined and that we can do nothing to change it, look before they cross the road." It's great. It's great. So yeah, I'm into trying to anticipate what's going to happen next. Okay. So I'm going to conclude with this picture. This is one of the most famous pictures that Cartier-Bresson made of an urban setting. All right. I'm coupling this with a quote that I have that upsets some people when I say that the highest form of photographic achievement is anticipating luck. So this is a construction site, and I have a video recording of Cartier-Bresson being interviewed, and it's in French. Canada is a we speak French and English. I'm not fluent in French, but there were subtitles. Okay, so I can tell you what was going on. You see this area back here. This fence is protecting the construction site. This is hoarding. Hoarding is like solid panels put up so that people on the other side can't see the construction going on. And I'll bet you there'll be some places where the construction. Well, Cartier-Bresson was standing there, and he was standing in behind one of these, like where this picture is, there's hoarding in front of him. And he says he heard a noise, and he took a chance. He put the camera over his head, and he clicked the shutter, and this is what he got. And the fellow that is interviewing him says, "Mon Dieu, like, are you serious? Are you telling me this is luck?" And Cartier-Bresson, to his credit, says, "Of course, it's all luck." I mean, this guy is one of the most famous street photographers that has existed, certainly for photography. And he's saying it's all luck. What he's saying is you need to anticipate everything. Could I critique the photo? Yeah, but I'm not going to critique it. But the point is, like, I wish the fence was vertical. That's like, because I'm very anal in that regard. But the point is, that's a good lesson. Okay.